Hello, welcome to the show. Today we're going to talk about Ethgate, which is a bit of a scandal or a conspiracy theory that is tied up in the XRP world with the SEC versus Ripple case. So we're going to dig into what does this mean, why do people call it Ethgate, and what does this sort of mean for anybody who holds XRP. All right, welcome to the show. Today we're going to talk about the very juicy scandal called Ethgate, which, I actually started to write about this first a couple of months ago. And since I originally learned about this, more and more details keep coming uncovered. So it is very likely that this video may not age well as more details emerge about the saga of the SEC versus Ripple case. So I will do my best to explain what I know as of this point and what gaps still need to be filled in. And hopefully one day soon, this video will be silly because we'll know the truth and everything will have been revealed. I actually personally think that this saga would make a wonderful, juicy movie or a miniseries. They still do miniseries. It's kind of a thing from back in the day. And to dig into what really happened behind the scenes that led the SEC to sue Ripple several years ago, back in 2020, and whether the case is not as it may appear at surface level. All right, so what do we know about Ethgate? Okay, so let's just cover some of the basic facts. That in 2020, the SEC sued Ripple, claiming that some of the founders and leadership of Ripple sold a whole bunch of XRP tokens, and these XRP tokens were labeled as a security in this lawsuit. And you're not allowed to sell securities without registering as a security broker with the SEC. And this did not happen. Now, back during the early era of crypto, there were what were called ICOs, which is sort of a rip-off of the IPO, which is initial public offering. Crypto projects were offering ICOs, which stands for initial coin offering, where a large batch or a large group of tokens were sold to the public initially to help kind of like launch a project. It can give funding to this project, and the proceeds from this initial coin offering sale can be used to build out the technology, hire staff, etc. Kind of like how an IPO is used as a fundraiser. And it's pretty well documented at this point that Ethereum did an ICO. It was not sort of managed out of the US, but it was used to fund growth of the Ethereum blockchain. And the Ripple thing is a little bit different because Ripple didn't actually create XRP. It was created by a group of developers before the company Ripple even existed. And a large portion of this XRP was donated to the company Ripple when it was founded. And several of the initial sort of leadership founders, etc., were given pretty large quantities of tokens. And one of them, interestingly, Jed McCaleb, has sold his steadily over the last couple of years. That kind of wrapped up in the summer of 2022. But he, interestingly, was not named in this lawsuit. It was two other leaders, Chris Larson and Brad Garlinghouse, who were named in this lawsuit as well. Now, there's a lot of weird things about this lawsuit. Namely, why is XRP considered a security where Ethereum is not? It kind of brings up one thing people bring up is this idea that one is decentralized and the other one is not, which if you've ever read anything about the Howie test, which is how the SEC determines what is and is not a security, the idea with the Howie test is that back in the early part of the 20th century, an orange grove farmer wanted to expand, so he sold like portions of his land to investors, kind of like selling stock in the land company. And he was going to use the proceeds from that to expand. So he was this individual. He sold parts of his business essentially to raise money to expand. So there was an agreement, this what's called an investment contract, where this guy, raised money, and the expectation from the people who invested was that they would generate profit. So basically how most of us would invest in the stock market at this point. Now, the thing, though, with XRP and Ripple is that the XRP ledger was created before Ripple existed, and not all of the XRP has anything to do with Ripple. There are other projects that run on the XRP ledger, like NFT projects, gaming projects. I could, if I knew how to do it, could launch a project tomorrow on XRP ledger and use XRP to support the transactions on that ledger, and I have absolutely nothing whatsoever to do with Ripple. So the idea that people only own XRP to get a return from the efforts of Ripple is misguided, because Ripple did not create XRP and they don't have exclusive ownership of it. Now, they have a big supply of it for their on-demand liquidity exchange, but that is not really what the issue was in this lawsuit. So because there are sort of these inconsistencies about it, it kind of led a lot of these online analysts, digital analysts, to investigate, well, is there kind of more to it? And if XRP is going to be considered a security, why is Ethereum not? I mean, they had an ICO. There was clear discussion that the money from that sale was going to be used to build out the Ethereum blockchain. How is that not a violation of the Howie test if XRP clearly falls into that? And it kind of digs into this bit of a scandal that goes back to when blockchain payments first became a possibility, back in sort of when Obama was still president. And a company called MoneyGram, which still exists today, was sort of the larger, kind of like Western Union, a large transfer provider. And the idea was to figure out how to use MoneyGram with blockchain technology. And there was kind of a connection between Alibaba and some other Chinese-owned companies about kind of this turf space. And there's a bit of a paper trail connecting these players, this Alibaba and MoneyGram paper trail, back to JP Morgan. And if you look at the big picture around commercial banking and the history of the Federal Reserve, is that the very large commercial banks in the U.S., JP Morgan, Citibank, etc., they kind of have a monopoly. They function like a cartel where they all are allowed to participate, but they don't really want outsiders to have an equal seat at the table. It's very difficult to start your own bank and compete with them. You have to be licensed, and the Federal Reserve System kind of only allocates accounts to certain banks. Like, it's a very closed garden system. Now, the thing about payments, which is basically moving money around the globe, it's a big money game. Like, we're talking trillions and trillions of dollars. And the companies that manage those payments get a cut. And while the cut might be a fairly small amount, when you consider the volume of payments that are made globally, it's big money. So when it was clear that the payment sector was going to move to the blockchain, and that Ripple, well, I'm not going to say this is clear. This is what is hypothesized, because I obviously wasn't there. What appears to be the case is that Ripple developed this really cool technology to make payments across borders very efficient and cost effective, and presented this idea to JP Morgan. And JP Morgan either wanted to own the technology or own a significant part of Ripple, and they were denied that. JP Morgan was basically like, if we can't own it, then we're going to stop you from doing it and kind of build a competitive offering. And so what it appears, and this is sort of the heart of the Ethgate thesis, is that JP Morgan, via a couple of law firms like Simpson Thacher, engineered a way for Ethereum to be this rival and to develop this software. And they were given a free pass out of the security gate hole and substantial investment money that was used to build out this platform. And the lawsuit against Ripple was intended to slow down Ripple's development in relationships with banks and with other kind of financial systems payers who would be nervous or concerned that, if this is a legit company, why are they being sued by the U.S. government? It was a stall tactic, essentially. But unfortunately, for Ethereum, they never seem to build the level of technology that can rival the XRP ledger and the XRP system, the software packages that Ripple has built. So it wasn't really a successful effort in terms of overtaking them. And some very skilled and talented analysts have created in-depth maps of connecting who all the players were, the meetings that they had, and it also showed that there is a very revolving door between some of these prominent law firms that serve Wall Street and Washington and the SEC and firms like JP Morgan, and that they're quite incestuous and that people move from one to the other. So the idea that the SEC is actually policing anyone is kind of silly because they're all friends and they're all kind of working together. And that is sort of the heart of Ethgate, is that there wasn't an equal opportunity for every player, including Ripple, to have a shot at succeeding. And that even if you have a great product, if you are not giving away a substantial part of your equity to a legacy participant in the market, then there will be consequences. And interestingly, we live in this era where everything is videotaped, right? And Gary Gensler, who is the current head of the SEC, used to teach at MIT. And there's a video of him talking about how this works and how the banks protect their turf. And if you want to play in that sandbox, you are expected to give up a significant percentage. And if you don't, you won't be allowed to play in the sandbox. So it's this video, my understanding is it was recorded probably before this all happened, but explaining that this is just kind of how it works, that you don't get to just come in and do whatever you want if you are encroaching on turf that's dominated by another set of players. And this is not a new theory to anybody who has looked into the Federal Reserve System or central banking and kind of how the Fed protects some of the large commercial banks. That's its purpose. That's why it was created. The Ethereum free pass is a big part of this scandal because it ties back to a speech that one of the SEC employees named Bill Hinman made back in, I think, 2018, where he said that both Bitcoin and Ethereum were not securities, but it's unclear the details around who exactly wrote that speech. Did they know at the time that XRP was also not a security? And there's a lot of questions about that speech. And the speech is work product. It was written on Bill Hinman's work computer, and it involved feedback from other employees at the SEC. So there's an email paper trail discussing this. And there was a big group of people who were discussing it. And the judge, I guess, in this case, has legally ordered the SEC to release these emails like 6 times, and the SEC has refused to do it. So there's something in these emails that they really don't want everyone to see, and whether it's something totally unrelated to this case that is still a secret, that's one option, or it might flat out uncover some of the details around this sort of Ethgate theory. So this is a fascinating element for anybody who has been following this case, is what's in those emails? Will we ever see them? I think the cynical side of me is kind of worried at this point we won't ever see them because they'll use some sort of excuse or potentially settle the lawsuit before the time comes. So we'll kind of see how this plays out. And, as of recording this video, this lawsuit is not yet settled. I would love this video to not age well and for this case to settle so we can move on. And Ripple can stop being held back from sort of this stigma of being sued, and exchanges could relist XRP, which would obviously help with volume of liquidity in the marketplace. So that is the crux of the Ethgate scandal. Basically, the question is, or the theory is that JP Morgan and the SEC conspired to sue Ripple for something that clearly appears to not be a security in an effort to slow down Ripple's success in the marketplace. And that, there are a lot of things that back up this thesis. One of which is this case has dragged out unnecessary. It's almost comical how many delays have come along in this case. And if the SEC was really confident that they had a good case, you'd think that they would be pushing to get a win so that they could use this as precedent to, target other crypto tokens that they believe may, are securities as well. And they just keep stalling, stall after stall after stall, to the point where it just feels like this case might go on forever, which I hope it is not the case. So that is the crux of the Ethgate scandal. And if you like to talk about blockchain technology, specifically the utility tokens around XRP, XLM, etc., and you're interested in geopolitics and the future of money, join me in my locals community called twostepsahead.locals.com. I'll have the link in the description below, and we can continue the conversation over there. Alrighty, I will see you in the next video.